You know, every so often, a breakthrough comes along that completely changes the world. And antibiotics, they were one of the big ones, a true miracle drug. But here's the twist. What if that miracle is starting to fade away? We're going to dive into the incredible story of antibiotics and the paradox that's now putting them and us at risk.
So, let me just ask you this. Think back about 100 years ago. Could something as simple as a scratch from a rose bush, or, playing with your cat, could that actually kill you? And the answer, which is pretty terrifying, is yes, absolutely. Before the 1940s, hospitals were full of people dying from infections that started with a tiny cut. Things we barely think about today, like pneumonia or strep throat, were often a death sentence. There was nothing doctors could do but just hope for the best.
But then, just like that, everything changed. And it wasn't because of some massive, planned research project, nope. It was all thanks to an accidental discovery by one guy, Sir Alexander Fleming. A moment of pure chance that would end up saving millions and millions of lives.
Fleming himself was so humble about it all. He had this famous quote, "I did not invent penicillin. Nature did that. I only discovered it by accident." And that just perfectly sums it up, right? This wasn't something he built, it was something he noticed. So okay, how did this accident actually happen? Well, picture this. It's 1929. Fleming gets back from vacation and finds that one of his petri dishes growing staph bacteria has been contaminated with mold. Ugh, a mess, right? But he saw something incredible. Around that little patch of mold, there was a clear ring, a little force field where the bacteria just couldn't survive. He realized the mold must be making something that killed the bacteria. He called that substance penicillin. And just like that, the world's first antibiotic was discovered.
And that one discovery really kicked off the antibiotic age. So, how do they work? What's the secret sauce that lets them kill these tiny invaders without hurting us?
Well, the absolute genius of an antibiotic is its precision. It's like a guided missile. It's designed to lock onto parts of a bacterial cell that our human cells just don't have, which, by the way, is exactly why they do absolutely nothing against viruses. A virus is a completely different kind of beast, and it doesn't have the targets that antibiotics are built to find. So, do they all work the same way? Not really. They basically fall into two main groups. You've got your bactericidal drugs. Think of these as the assassins. They kill the bacteria outright. Penicillin, for example, just shreds the bacteria's cell wall until it literally explodes. Then you have the bacteriostatic ones. These guys don't go for the kill. They just stop the bacteria from multiplying, basically holding them in place so your own immune system can swoop in and clean up the mess. And that difference is really important. If someone has a weak immune system, you're probably going to want that bactericidal drug that can get the job done all by itself.
So, for a few decades there, it felt like we had this unbeatable weapon. We had won. But we totally underestimated our enemy. Because bacteria, they're survivors, and they started to adapt. They started to fight back.
And this brings us to the single biggest problem we face today: antibiotic resistance. All it means is that bacteria have evolved new defenses that make our drugs useless. The medicine goes in, and the bacteria just shrug it off and keep right on growing.
And the speed of this evolution is just mind-blowing. I mean, look at this timeline. Penicillin is first used on a patient in 1941. Resistance is found 1 year later. So in 1960, we roll out a new drug, methicillin, to beat that resistance. By 1961, bacteria are already resistant to it. Fast forward to the year 2000, we introduce a brand new, powerful synthetic drug called linazol. And yep, you guessed it, resistance pops up the very next year. It's this non-stop biological arms race. And every time we make a move, the bacteria seem to have a counter move waiting. This crazy fast evolution has pushed us into a really dangerous new era, the age of the superbug. And these are the infections that we're all worried about, the ones where our best medicines just don't work anymore.
So what is a superbug? Really, it's just a nickname for bacteria that have collected resistance to a whole bunch of different antibiotics. The most famous one, you've probably heard of it, is MRSA. It's a type of staph bacteria that's now resistant to methicillin and a lot of our other go-to drugs. These are the kinds of infections that can become so deadly in hospitals. So how in the world did we get to this point? Well, mostly it's our own fault. Every single time we use an antibiotic, we're basically challenging the bacteria to evolve, and we've been using them way too much. Overusing them in people, misusing them for things like a cold or the flu where they have zero effect, And then there's the massive use in agriculture, not just for sick animals, but to make them grow faster. All of this has put evolution into overdrive.
And the stakes here are just incredibly high. Look at this number. Even with all the amazing medical technology we have today, infectious diseases are now the third leading cause of death in some developed countries. A lot of that is because of growing resistance. This isn't some problem for the future. It's here, right now.
Okay, I know this all sounds pretty grim, but the fight is not over, not by a long shot. And this isn't just a job for scientists. We all have a role to play in this. So what can we actually do to help turn this tide?
It really all comes down to being smart about how we use them. First, only take antibiotics when a doctor prescribes them. Don't demand them for a cold. And if you are prescribed them, please, please, please finish the entire prescription, even if you start to feel better. You have to wipe out all the bacteria, not just the weakest ones. And it should go without saying, but never share your antibiotics or use some leftovers from last year.
And just to really hammer this point home, it is so important to understand the difference here. Antibiotics are the key for a bacterial lock. They are completely useless against a virus. For something like the flu, we have a whole other class of drugs called antivirals. Using the wrong tool doesn't just fail to help you get better, it actively makes the bigger problem of resistance worse for everyone.
And here's why it's so important to protect the drugs we have. Finding brand new types of antibiotics is really, really hard, and it's expensive. For decades, most new drugs on the market have just been slightly tweaked versions of old ones. Plus, there's a money problem. A drug company makes a lot more money on a pill you take every day for life than on one that cures you in 10 days. So a lot of the investment has just dried up.
Which kind of leaves us with this one big question. This amazing medical era we live in, it started with a lucky accident in a messy lab. Is it going to end, not by accident, but because of the choices we all make? The future of these miracle drugs, it really is in our hands.